This Luka Doncic trade to LA really shocked the NBA, the league, the fans, everybody, as nobody would expect these two teams to make this deal, especially for what the Mavs got in return. So with one franchise player leaving their team, another star is joining a franchise player, as De'Aaron Fox would then get traded to the Spurs a day later. So right now, I just want to talk about every team in these two trades and what is their main goals and really what they get out of these trades and what is in the future for them. So with what the Mavericks got in Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and only one first round pick, I don't think this is enough when it comes to future assets, but they still got a great player in Anthony Davis that will be able to balance their team out a little bit more compared to Doncic and Kyrie in the lineup being a little bit more offensive orientated. At least having Anthony Davis brings in the defensive capabilities, especially in the interior, but also brings another dimension to their offense as he's a good paint scorer, could work well in pick and rolls with Kyrie, and could still get his buckets on his own from the mid-range area, high post, all that. So with this deal, I think the Mavericks were more looking towards a 2 to 4 year plan with Kyrie and Anthony Davis compared to just having Luka for the next 6 to 8 years of really good play, which again is something I don't agree with, but this is the move that they made, and they made their team more balanced compared to being more offensive orientated. So the Mavericks just didn't trust in Luka Doncic's health and conditioning, which if he kept those bad habits would definitely affect him going into his supermax and affect the Mavs championship aspirations. And in most cases, overall morale for the team, as they would also see Luka Doncic on a day-to-day basis and see the type of work ethic he has throughout his time. So with the Mavericks, it was hard for them to look for an extension just due to his health based off of other star players like Joel Embiid, Zion Williamson that's been on the bad side of these health issues and conditioning issues, being out for lots of games. But still, with Luka, compared to those two, hasn't been too much of the case. He had some issues of injuries, but for most people around the league, we didn't know what his issues were behind the scenes. Now for the Lakers, they're obviously going to have to deal with Luka's bad habits and issues, but for what they're going to now get in an extension with Luka, which is not going to be the $345 million that the Mavericks would have had to pay, it goes down since the trade happened. This makes it a little bit more tolerable for the Lakers to deal with. And let's not forget who Luka Doncic is as a player, as one of the best players in the league, and has led the Mavericks already to a championship at only 25 years old. Obviously, defense is an issue for him when it comes to actual scheming, but in the end, knowing what Doncic does on the offensive end, creating for himself and others, it's very easy to look past his weakness on defense. For everything that Doncic has done in this league so far, has already put himself in the category of being a future Hall of Famer, and having that at 26 years old, where you have another at least 6 to 8 years to develop on that, is a massive steal for the Lakers. Now for the Lakers, I think their main mindset is, of course, getting a big man and replacing AD and getting a proper defensive team around Doncic. And with LeBron being included on this team, obviously he's going to hopefully help Luka Doncic with his issues as it pertains to conditioning, knowing that LeBron is one of the most fit athletes in the league today, as well as how important he takes health and how much he puts into that side of the game off the court. I think the Lakers' big hope is that Luka Doncic seeing LeBron's day-to-day activities leads to Doncic changing his styles and his bad habits. So for the Lakers, this is a good trade, knowing that they now have a very good future after LeBron James. And for the Mavs, this is a very big risk as they now shorten their timeline of how they can compete, but overall for the roster, they made the necessary change to make themselves more balanced. They definitely got the talent in return, but no real insurance for the future, which again goes back into Anthony Davis and his injury history. Lastly, the Jazz was just there as a filler team to facilitate the trade a little bit more, creating space for the Lakers and in that process they got Jalen Hood-Schifino and 2 second-round picks for being a part of the deal, and you'll continue to see the Jazz in the deadline as they are going to continue to rebuild and change their roster up over time. Alright, now for the other trade involved with the Spurs, the Bulls, and the Kings. I'm going to start with the Spurs, and one of my main notes about this deal is that now the Spurs have the opportunity to compete for a playoff spot instead of just rebuilding with Victor Wembanyama. But I think the biggest part of this deal that made it really good for the Spurs is that they kept all their young players. They still have Castle, they still have Vassell, Sohan, and even though Keldon Johnson hasn't been playing too well, you still have him off the bench to be a solid contributor, at least at that role right now. So I would say this is a really good trade for the Spurs, and it gives Victor an opportunity to actually compete with the better teams in the West right now, as De'Aaron Fox is able to bring a different dimension to the Spurs' game as a transition scorer and a scorer from the perimeter at point guard, as well as being able to be a reliable option in the fourth quarter. Now for the Kings, this is a really weird return, not really with the assets. I think they got enough assets when it comes to the 3 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks, but mostly talking about Zach LaVine in the deal. I think with Zach LaVine, he's a very good player and he could play on contending teams as a solid contributor, but I just don't think in this role with the Kings he's going to be able to excel, at least from a team standpoint. His individual stats may be fine playing with DeRozan and Sabonis in this situation, but I just don't think it works as a team, and I don't think they excel as much as they would want to. As the Kings are still going to be a high-powered offense in my opinion, with Zach LaVine, DeRozan, Sabonis, as well as still having some key pieces in Keegan Murray and Malik Monk. But I think the 2 problems will be how well are they going to facilitate without a point guard in the lineup, as well as how bad their defense is going to be, because again, with another trade for the Kings, this is another deal that does not provide them any defensive upgrades. But still, having this team makes it very hard for them to actually try and tank or rebuild in a certain sense of building younger players, which they really only have Keegan Murray at this point. Now for the Bulls, with this deal, having LaVine gone and maybe Vucevic in the coming days, this puts them in a very good spot to develop with the young talent they have right now. Coby White and Josh Giddey will get an increased usage that will help them develop, as well as other players like Ayo Dosunmu, Montes Patelis, Dalen Terry will all get the opportunity to develop in a young system that the Bulls have right now, and they can focus more on rebuilding instead of trying to compete and be kind of the middle of the pack in the East right now. And if this does cause them to fall in the standings, they could always fall back on the 2025 first round pick that they got back in this deal that they first sent out earlier. So this puts them in a great spot to get a solid player in the next draft. So this was overall a good trade to get rid of LaVine's contract, as well as getting some okay pieces in Kevin Huerter, Trey Jones, and Zach Collins that might end up being traded again. But overall, getting your pick back as well as getting your young players to further develop with more usage is obviously a great play for the Chicago Bulls in the long run. Now for the NBA, specifically talking about the Luka trade, this posed the thoughts around executives all over the league to think that anybody could be traded, essentially, as Luka was more looked at as an untouchable player. This really puts other stars around the league's values in question, as nobody really knows what these executives are thinking at this point, and that's why there's been a lot more talks of other executives around the leagues really asking around if their stars are truly available. So with the Mavs GM making this big risk, honestly a true gamble, this might make other executives more eager to make moves in the future as well for their stars, or to trade away one of their stars. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.